Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Wyszynski, and I am so happy to welcome you to Milwaukee Public Library Centennial Hall. Yes. Our mission at the library is to help people read, learn, and connect, so you can imagine how amazing a day like today is when we can work with a wonderful partner like Woodland Pattern, make that connection, and then connect teens to help support the connection of teens to wonderful programming. See you all here from the community in the library for the final stage of the Milwaukee Youth Poet Laureate program, year 2, and to really showcase the talent of some exceptional Milwaukee teenagers. So excited for a wonderful afternoon with everyone, and I will pass it over to Antonio.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and everyone for being here. This program, I'm Antonio Vargas Nieto, the Assistant Programming Director at Woodland Pattern, and this whole event definitely would not be possible without the support ongoing year-round since before the first program even started. The library has been a core partner and has been essential. They help us host workshops, and we're clearly here in their space here, so thank you again to MPL for everything. And then, I'm going to make this brief because Kelly did a really good job of summing up what this program does for teens and the city. Woodland Pattern has an extensive network of poets throughout the country, and it's really exciting to help teens get connected right away because I overheard quite a few poets in the audience say that they wish that programs like this existed when they were young as well. So anyway, like I said, I'm Antonio Vargas Nieto, and I'm gonna just introduce everybody really quick. The event will be hosted by Peggy Rozga. She is the former Wisconsin Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2020. And then we have Emily Igwike as well, who is our first Youth Poet Laureate. It's been a real pleasure hanging out with Emily for the last year, off and on, talking about poetry. Emily has influenced my approach to poetry very deeply, from writing to aesthetics to like the meaning behind why we put the words on the page. So it's been really great to know Emily. And I'm really excited to welcome the 3 finalists for this year. We have Temiloluwa Adesanya from Dominican High School. We have Aleena Ahmed from Nicolet High School. And we have Laya Sumithra from University School of Milwaukee. And then thank you to our judges as well. We have Sean Enfield, who is a poet and PhD candidate in creative writing at UWM. We have April Heding, who is the Milwaukee Arts Board member and manager of Afterschool Arts and Humanities at Milwaukee Recreation. And then we have CJ Scruton, who is a poet and director of Woodland Pattern's Milwaukee Queer Writing Project. And then just really quickly, we are deeply grateful for the following sponsors whose support is already helping fund year 2 of Milwaukee's Youth Poet Laureate program. Amazon Literary Partnership, the Academy of American Poets, Poetry Foundation, and MPS Partnership for Arts and Humanities. And then if we could just have the finalists take the table over here so we could determine the order. They're all very brave for just coming up here, sharing their work, and then not even knowing who's going first, second, or third. But we're about to determine it. So the order will be Aleena first, Laya second, and then Temi third. Or we traded. No, it's okay. Go for it. Go for it. Yeah, go for it. No, go for it. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, Temi will be going first. Laya is second, and Aleena's third. Oh, love to see it. Please welcome Peggy.
I think Antonio's just a little bit taller than I am. Well, we are in for a treat today. We have three amazing, talented poets. They represent a range of poetry styles, a range of places and attention to place. Their poetry is woven with cultural richness as well as personal reflection. They give us poems of defining moments, poems of longing, determination, struggle, assertion. When I read through the poems this week, I thoroughly enjoyed them. They affirmed some thoughts that I've had, including some that I hadn't quite put into words. They were just kind of vague feelings. And then I read the poem and thought, oh yeah, I felt that. And they gave it words so that I could take fuller possession of that feeling. They took me to places I hadn't been. I learned a lot. I experienced a lot. Each of them is attentive to detail and language to convey details, emotions, and insights precisely. Their language brings the reader, the listener, me, us, into the experience with vivid descriptions of place and emotion. I was particularly struck by their use of strong verbs. So you'll hear some of these words as they read their poems. Words like breached, tainted, gnaw, drench, chuckle, plucked. I'm honored and excited to be part of this event today. It's important, of course, for the three poets we celebrate today who have worked hard to develop their talent and are looking for the next steps in their growth as artists. Their work exemplifies the excellence that is important to the poetic tradition, the poet laureate tradition. They write poems that see their experience as poets laureate do, that is, see that experience in its social and public context. That is the tradition of the poet laureate. The community role, the public role, is at the heart of being a poet laureate since the beginning in England in 1668 with John Dryden. They write for the nation, they celebrate public events. Some specific duties that poets laureate picked up in the English tradition were to write New Year's poems and royal birthday poems. And it continued in that way for 200 years. But gradually, especially by the time of Queen Victoria, the laureate was chosen for excellence in poetry without being assigned specific duties and specific occasions to write for. But the retention of emphasis continued on public events. For example, Alfred Lord Tennyson's charge of the Light Brigade in 1855 commemorates the bravery of British soldiers in what was a truly disastrous battle. In my own term as Wisconsin Poet Laureate in 2019-2020, I spoke to public events and I read from my books that do that as well. beginning with my first book, 200 Nights and One Day, about Milwaukee's open housing marches, in the voices of multiple participants in those marches, and continuing through Pestiferous Questions, a book that focuses on Jessie Benton Fremont and her husband, John Charles Fremont. You probably have seen the name Fremont on streets, in cities, sometimes on parks. He was an explorer, given credit for a lot of California discoveries, and promoted by his father-in-law, so that his name became especially well known. But they opposed slavery. They came from a Southern tradition, but they opposed slavery during and before and after the Civil War. So that public emphasis continued in my work and as well as in the work of other poets laureate. So that is one of the things that the poets here today have done and will continue to do. The day, of course, is important to them personally. The Milwaukee Youth Poet Laureate will receive a $500 book allowance, paid summer internship with Woodland Pattern, including a poetry camp counselor position, ongoing mentorship and support from Woodland Pattern and from Antonio, a full-ride scholarship to participate in UW-Madison's Pass the Mic Festival, hosted by First Wave, along with opportunities to perform around the city, compete for regional and national titles, lead writing workshops for fellow youth poets, and connect with local organizations to spotlight social causes. So it's an important role for them personally and their own growth as poets. But it's also important for us. The Poet Laureate is someone who speaks for, to, and with a wider range of people. Important for poetry itself, for us, for the city of Milwaukee, for the listeners, for the audiences. Given our daily chores, business, and busyness, the rush, there is much that we overlook. But poets practice careful and caring observation, see what we may overlook. They raise questions, express determination, and affirm value. The city needs this infusion of caring and careful, insightful, skillful, artful employment of language. The finalists for this Poet Laureate position have that caring, insightful, skillful, and artful language in their work. They bring forth creative experiences that help us all grow, that help us grow as a community, people who think and act in ways that work for the betterment of all, that enrich us all. So this Youth Poet Laureate position is important for our city. It's also important for poetry itself. Poetry needs you. Poetry is sometimes thought of as voices from the past. Maybe not so much in the audience gathered here today, but generally I think you find that in the community at large. It was the tradition I was taught in school. And I'm not putting that down entirely. There is much that is wonderful in that tradition. It's how I fell in love with poetry. The first poem that I ever really loved was Gerard Manley Hopkins' Spring and Fall. It begins saying my name. Margaret, are you grieving over golden grove unleaving? Leaves like the things of man, you with your fresh thoughts care for, can you? I loved it saying my name. I felt Hopkins talking directly to me. But it also opened the door to poetry for me. The door opening role is one of the things that the Youth Poet Laureate will do for the city of Milwaukee, bring forward and welcome what Hopkins talks about for Margaret, that is, fresh thoughts. The Poet Laureate will open that door or open it wider for those who are already tuned into poetry by her voice, by her living presence, by her fresh thoughts and fresh thinking. Poetry wants them. Poetry needs them. Hopkins worked in a tradition of rhyme, and that is the way that some people still think about poetry. What's poetry? It's rhyming. But of course, we know there's much more to that. And poets continued in that tradition of using rhyme, but gradually poets said, you know what? Fresh thoughts, fresh styles, and fresh poetry need not always rhyme. And poetry said, yes, you're right. I can be free verse. I can embrace and honor fresh experience in fresh ways. And oh, by the way, I can return to rhyme when I choose. And Temi writes rhyme when it suits her purpose. But she also chooses other forms and creates other forms for other poetic purposes. Traditional poetry tended to favor short lines. Iambic pentameter gives you 10 syllables. Hopkins uses an 8-syllable line. But poetry also welcomes fresh thoughts about line length, including prose poetry, as Aleena writes in her poem, Paralysis. She also chooses other forms or creates other forms when she has other poetic purposes. Traditional poetry in English loves the 4-line stanza, the quatrain. Laya gives the quatrain a fresh look with parallel first lines, each of them 2 words, each naming an element, with the following 3 lines expanding, elaborating on that element in surprising ways, often with strong verbs. Today, in the work of these 3 poets whom we honor today, you'll see much more that is fresh, that honors, and that renews poetry. That is what Poets Laureate do. That is, they bring poetry into our living community. Let us begin. So, Temi, you did the trade that brings you first? Okay. Temi is in the 11th grade at Dominican High School. She's a Nigerian American. Her parents were born in Nigeria. She came to poetry through journaling in middle school in particular, and gradually, as she practiced her writing, she turned to poetry. Her favorite poet is Maya Angelou. Temi?
Thank you. I really appreciate being here. I'm really grateful for this moment. I have 3 poems to perform here. And this first poem is just about my mom. She feels her love. My daughter, my joy. Is it pride that you feel when I remind you that we are the same scarlet soul? We are first daughters, born with unrelenting love, persisting love, unrequited love. My daughter, my pride. Is it joy that you feel? Alike in our ivory smiles, dark orange palms of hands and feet that sway and slide to the same beating songs. My mother, my figure. I see it too. The warm vines that bind us up, the same piercing roots. My mother, my daughter, my light. I am yours and you are mine. Thanks. So the second poem is about my experience transitioning into womanhood, specifically my moments of girlhood. Here we go. Way back when, just now, I remembered a girl, one that was told to show a great big love and possessed a soul like gleaming pearls, like rays shining from above. She was brave, yet still warm, but had no clue of the years to come, of when the dancing monsters of adulthood began to swarm. So quickly they came, it struck her dumb. Maybe they hadn't meant it, or maybe it was their weakness, but in the bliss of maturing, they had sliced her chest, and out came her dark scarlet heart, throbbing in a pool of its own goodness. Then joyfully sealed up, took her best. Her smiles melted and my sternness showed. Whenever someone asked me to explain, maybe this is a story that I should have told. So this is my final poem. It's about a vivid memory that I have of when I was younger. It was kind of a recurring event that happened, and it's one of the more potent memories that I have when I was a child, and it was a very familial and joyful moment. Here we go. My kind. Once again, I hear their voices from inside, like a dozen beating drums to different songs. The door swings open, and everything is clear. Auntie flows like a calm, deep hum. Uncle is booming with a rasp in his throat. One by one, with arms full, they carry bags of nylons with clinking malts, and silver tins brimming with pounded yam and efo-riro. I remember my request from when I was as small as my mother's waist. She chuckled. With 3 strong fingers, she plucked the swallow and scooped stew from my mouth. My gaze passes her head. I can eat alone, but when we are together, we are one.
Thank you, Temi. Our second reader is Laya Sumithra. She is also an 11th grader. She goes to the University School of Milwaukee. She has a lifelong love of singing and music and plays the piano. And so one of her favorite poets is also a singer, that is Taylor Swift, especially her latest album. Poetry, Laya says, plays a powerful role in the way it tells stories. It's one of the things she loves about poetry. And another of her loves is the theater and acting. Laya?
Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I'm so glad to be here today and to be able to share this space with you. My first poem is titled The Sins of a Hummingbird. When writing this poem, I was really trying to understand the relationship between temptation and sin. So the poem itself is set in this kind of second Garden of Eden, and it represents this never-ending cycle of love leading to damnation. It was a perfectly still pond, not a ripple on its surface, round as the moon, with lily pads and koi fish in orbit, disturbed only by the hummingbird, which breached its defenses. It was tainted impure by the bloody battle broken within it. The hummingbird, plagued by love, had finally succumbed to it. The koi, one amongst the many, had chosen to keep love secret. The pond was her final portal, glass between two separate worlds, past and present reflected across each other. The future kept hidden still. Shattered shards turned time's tide. The hummingbird, unable to flap its wings, drowned and died. The koi alone pondered why it had survived. The capsulation of Eden grew dormant, then burst alive. My next poem is titled Harmony, The Necessary Sacrifice. I really do love this poem because it follows my grandma's story from when she was a teenager in India. It allows me to pay tribute to the immense sacrifices she has made to bring my family to where it is today. I close my eyes and adjust to the low hum of eternal summer and its insects. A space between worlds, a space between the past and the present. It envelops me. Memories flood past my eyelids as I remember what's brought me here, how I've lost what I love. It was the first winter of '76, January. Not to say that winters in India weren't really winters. They were merely cooler summers, a reprieve from the blistering sun upon our faces. I was 15. My routine was the same every day, the same as it had been since I was 7. I'd loved to sing ever since I was little. My younger sister and I learned Indian classical music, Carnatic music, together, as expected of a Hindu girl of society and culture. It was the one thing I truly loved, perhaps even my one true love. But love, I learned soon, love never lasts. Love is our form of an unreachable quota, an unreachable goal, the one thing we strive toward. Love was the one thing we wanted, but the one thing we never found. In later years, I would think that I set this curse of love, or the lack thereof, upon my family. Singing Carnatic music was our way of connection, of religion, of culture, of marriage. I had spent my childhood wishing the one same thing, seeing the one same future. A future where I sang, a future where all I did was sing. My dream shattered that first winter. For January brought with it the promise of marriage. My grandparents told us that they wouldn't be around much longer. They wanted to marry us girls off. And that was that. February brought with it the promise of my new beau, a man 15 years my senior, him being the 30 to my 15. However, tradition did not give me a say in my own fate, for that was decided by the elders of the house. I was only made to bow down to them, a namaskaram, a respectful greeting, sing one song, prove my worth, then disappear from where I had come. The wedding arrangements nor the groom were to be my choice. It was a matter of families, and he chose me. We were wed in April, and I was to forget my music, my everything that I had known and loved thus far. Promised to a man I had not known prior, I vowed to myself to rise higher, to achieve everything I had planned. I would not let marriage ruin me. I would not let marriage ruin me. Thank you. My last poem is titled Daughter of the Moon. Through this poem, I hope to emulate the life of a queen of the night flower, which blooms in the moonlight for only a single night. To me, its fleeting beauty was a living representation of hope, of how hope and light can come out of even the darkest of times. The word, sliced by sunlight, peppered with moon dust, lies splattered across the dull, checkered floor. The sound, wings of azul faded brown wrapped in the darkest depths, crawls out of its cocoon. The light, a grove of sunrise-bloomed roses, the carcass of autumn petals, shadowing beauty and flowered silence. The moon, shaped by fissures of emptiness, a lone survivor in a land bygone, bloomed from remnants of sunset. The birth, withering away at dawn's rays, a white crown reaching for night's beam, her reign brief and rare as the eve. Thank you.
Our next poet is Aleena Ahmed. She's a 10th grader at Nicolet High School. She's loved telling stories even before she could write. She got her love of telling stories, she thinks probably from her mother, who also is a storyteller and very good at what she does. The love of stories is what led her into poetry. Her favorite poet is Joy Harjo, at least in English. She also reads Bengali poets in English. Aleena?
Good afternoon. I'm just so grateful to be here and share my art and little pieces of my soul. So this first poem is called Paralysis, and it's inspired by a conversation I had with my bhaiya, my brother, on how to navigate fear, and it's also paying tribute to, the struggles of immigrant parents. I use the symbol of the lily because it's the national flower of Bangladesh, and it's also a symbol of enlightenment and rejuvenation and rebirth. Paralysis, the need to be buried, hidden, become one with the water beneath life in lily pad. Fear is an insect with legs that seep into my pores, take over my skin. If only you knew, Bhaiya would say. Before the invention of shoes, women walked barefoot. Home was the naked back, calloused and yet welcoming to infant arms. Feet bled and carried rubble, carried sediment and salt, journeyed through mud and floodplain. If only you knew. Our history is documented into the pores of her skin, fossilized and encrypted, no need to relive it, and yet it is ever present. All the scarring, all the sacrifice, accumulation of croaking voices and scrubbing blood beyond any proof of its existence. If only you knew every sacrifice made. She could have stayed home, be woken by the rhythm of rain, lyrical and vivacious beneath the tender sun. Myriads of conifers at every inch of her home, eager arms garnishing her neck with jasmine, coating turmeric thick on her skin, massaging her scalp with mustard oil, wandering through Kashful near the riverside. Her head is clouded of these rainy days, everyone bundled up, close together, eating ilish and khichdi. If only you knew all the risks. Every entry into unknown territory, diving headfirst, unknowing of where to land or how to swim. Tides push and pull, moisture clusters together, garners thunder and storm. The current sweeps her away. These waters are warped, she doesn't understand. She doesn't know how to survive. Rain only sings an ode for sickness here. If only you knew, every look into a mirror, unable to recognize the stranger staring back, every time it came back, that violating sense of confusion and discomfort and guilt. She is cold, cold, shivering. Every time she mistook a seething hand for the radiance of the sun, the warmth of her country. If only you knew. Perhaps you wouldn't be so afraid. How did one live? Above the lily pad, however cold, deprived of sensation, of comfort, of their life. Paralysis is hereditary, he says, but so is capacity, so is strength, and so is freedom. So my life is a little, I've explored and been to various different places, and one of those places is the birthplace of my parents, Bangladesh. So this next poem sort of explores my experience during my time there, and the connections my family has to it. Bangla Jade turned jaded. Identity was a prerequisite to 1971, lives lost and voices broken, cracking, bleeding, and yet existing. It is not a common sight nowadays. We traverse through soot among raucous cars and bustling streets caked with mud and remnants of plastic and pride. I squeeze across herds of people pushing and jostling one another, bridges littered with beggars aside insect carcasses and rust. Ma reminisces of how she would read poetry the flavor of fruit and paprika, pick mangoes, peel their skin and breathe, where vowel and rhythm would push and bend and partake in their ancient dance. Ink is a map for the chords of our past, the song in our spine. It is an easy thing to forget among the smoke, she says. Nowadays, posters litter the walls of every building, once vivid and loquaciously imprinted, now tattered and fixated on dirt floors. Accumulating ants and desecration only to be reprinted and replaced. I remember their faces poised with certainty and promise. We settle down below by fuchkas and remain seated on the sidewalk. This last poem is called Price Point, and it's sort of a commentary and criticism on the way that society treats women. Her face is blistered with char, glistening shards of licorice paste that reek of sulfur and kiln fumes. They drench her in lemon juice and peppermint, scotch tape with nothing but red ribbon, tying, fixing, cutting off her circulation. Dust gathers near her feet where termites gnaw and crawl, and there is nothing she can do. The cracks on her skin dictate her price point, rift apart her joints. She is permanently sulking, damaged, meant to be of porcelain, not asphalt. They chip at her spirit, her value. Nobody sees the use in such a pot, unable to serve its decorative purpose, so bruised and filthy. The owner tosses her away and mumbles under his breath. Sales were getting low. He wondered why this was the third piece he had to throw out this week. Thank you.
Many thanks to you all, Temi, Laya, Aleena. Let's give them another round of applause. Antonio?
Thank you to all three of you. That was really excellent. That was really breathtaking. Next, we'll have Emily up. She is going to talk about her experience as Youth Poet Laureate, share a couple poems, and then Peggy will close us off with a couple poems while the judges make a very difficult decision. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hello, everyone. What was this on? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm so honored to be here. And to piggyback off of what Antonio said, I too am extremely impressed with the poems read today. Every single poem was very vivid, very honest, and very touching. And I admire the courage you guys all had to come up and share. Although bittersweet, I am so grateful that I've been able to culminate my year as Milwaukee Youth Poet Laureate. This program has granted me the ability to connect with so many creative youth within our community, especially with programs like Poetry Camp, which Woodland Pattern hosts every summer. My personal favorite memories this year have included, in my laureateship, being able to connect to different Poetry Camp participants, like two of my best friends from that camp, Ray and Sam, during revision workshops, as well as being able to visit different places in Milwaukee, like the Haggerty Museum, and finally being able to perform at the Milwaukee Art Museum for the Art Forward Gala. Today, as judges deliberate, I'll be sharing 3 poems, and then I'll pass the mic back. So my first poem I'll be reading today is titled Nature, which is actually inspired by one of the workshop prompts we did during Poetry Camp. Nature. Tell me about the last time it rained. Tell me how you felt. Bloated clouds, teasing gray sky, so far, yet so perfectly touchable. Tell me how you felt. Breathing heavy air, chloroplasts, impatient, with the photosynthetic necessity for purity, for renewal. Tell me how it feels to be loved by the earth. Rhythmic disturbances and green umbilical rooted within pulsing, greedy dirt. Tell me what it feels like to give part of yourself in exchange for scraps, a lung's afterthought. Tell me how it feels to wait for the sun each morning. The darkness a little longer every night, fear clutching your xylem as you pray for daylight. Thank you. My second poem I'll be reading is America's Black Holocaust Museum, which I wrote after the Poetry Camp visited ABHM and in response to the different displays they had in the museum. Legacy is the genome's retelling. Double helix turned prophet, proclaiming the future and whispering our pasts. I felt their tears. Trapped in sugar phosphate, hardened over time through silence, only broken by the courage of words, speaking life, speaking truth. The tart truth of history is that it sits with you, keeps you company, reminds you that your body is only a collection of carbon over time, the story you abandoned behind you, a scattered, cyclical repetition. Are you not the fruit, ripened with righteous anger that the vine produced? Whose fingers bled so that you could bloom? Thank you. And the last poem I'll read today is a short talk on Igbo, which is a prose poem I wrote for my creative writing class. Short talk on Igbo. And also for context, Igbo is a language that my family speaks, and it's the most popular language in southeastern Nigeria. Igbo is a dying language. It has seen the sun rise and fall on its people, half of it lingering in the collective consciousness. I've always loved the way Igbo adds flavor to language, to life. A joke is funnier in Igbo. Nnu is more potent than salt. Life bleeds into poetry when you speak it. Every word, each syllable, must be measured and held. The slightest shift in tone creates new meaning. With that, Igbo reminds me to be intentional, to listen. Memories laced throughout my childhood have Igbo stories, music, hymns, and words tucked into their corners. The language is a vessel of beauty, reminding me of what it means to love deeply, to love yourself and the world you inhabit. Take, for example, the phrase, good morning. The colonized translation, the phrase tainted by English, is otutuama, literally, a good morning. However, the true translation of good morning isn't even a statement in Igbo. It's a question. Ibolachi, have you greeted the day? Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I want to pick up a few words that you said here in this last poem about language. Language to love yourself and the world you inhabit. I can think of no better definition of what Poets Laureate do. Love language, bring the language and the world you inhabit together in a creative, productive way. Thank you so much, Emily. And I see our judges are not back yet. I think they must be having a hard time. Which gives me a chance to read a poem that I have been looking for the perfect occasion to read for a long time. Well, at least since writing it. Which was about a year ago, Woodland Pattern took the lead in raising questions about the fact that poetry was about to be erased from the walls of what used to be the Midwest Express Center, the Convention Center. It's an outstanding example of how Woodland Pattern connects to the community and connects poetry with the community. We did not want to see that connection erased. And so raised some questions and some objections to it. And we won. So one of the things that I wanted to do was write a poem that addressed that situation, that grew out of that situation. And so I wrote this cento, a poem composed of lines from poems that were in the convention center and that stayed there. So there are 45 poets who are honored by having a line in this poem called Restoring Words at the Wisconsin Center. And I use for an epigraph the words of Karl Rakowski. Go the way of earth and women into lyric matters. Give me your indecision where you can't pray or sing. Flee like arrows that expanse of you must do over and over. Don't argue, just exchange sorrow, rage, bricks, joy, old broom, cats all larger than life size. Go the way of the earth. We all travel the Milky Way together. Look at the stars. Light itself curls, its brightness inward. It has a silver face, its music, gentle wisdom, and tinkle of singing ice, the last word of every sentence. Let it hover there like the dare of a cat, all big, pulsing, turbulent, panoramic, always hoping it is the life in our hearts. Respect yourself, honey. So endlessly and tenderly you do it day after day. Dreamer, I think if you are not afraid, a hawk flies up, settles on a fence post. Dream tracks cover the land, this bridge into the future. If I could just get a word in edgewise, there is a history to the land, to trembles in the tendrils. My eye is on the water, the Wisconsin waterways, around which direction never changes. Surely waterbirds will alight here for the first time amid all the wild magnificence. Can you? Will you say, do you know? Are you homeward bound at last? I sit on the steps of our small house. All I know today is that I am in my grandmother's kitchen, fully free to wait, to learn, to dance, to go to work, to love the forgotten. And to look forward to what is new. My own new book is Restoring Prairie, poems written about, or inspired by, they're not all about, they're inspired by the 98-acre field station land being restored to prairie after 130 years of farming. It's about 10 miles west of Waukesha, was managed by the University of Wisconsin, Waukesha, and then the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee at Waukesha. And Milwaukee says they are going to maintain it. So that is the good news, although a lot is uncertain about it. But October on the prairie. Purple asters still hold their color. A west wind urges, frees, shakes loose, sweeps gold maple leaves from branches, rains them down to earth after taking them for a spin. You ask me, do you still believe the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice? The moral universe, I want to ask, is it contained within or bigger than the unmodified universe? What of the 130 years the prairie was broken and farmed? What of the 50 years now of restoring prairie? Ooh, I seem to have brushed up against wild parsnip, a blister on my right ankle, some salve, a dressing. I believe in healing and keep going. Yes, I still believe the arc of the moral universe bends earthward with the pull of my hands, and, if you will, the pull of yours. Hope is a stalk of purple asters at the edge of the tall grass. Hope is a plot of flattened grass where perhaps a deer lay last night. Hope is a puddle at the side of the trail filled with this morning's rain, the twiddle of a leaf on the quaking aspen, the reach of the oak shading the trail up the gentle slope to the prairie, and the dense ridges of the bark in a tree. Jeff says, before dark, more bird song. Hope is the bird song that begins with a crow, 3-point, 4-point, call, 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 answer, call. Hope is a human melodic whistle, a small white dog the human catches up in his arm. The blue stem seed heads that rise from gold green to tawny, almost red stem, their slight bend from the wind, from their own weight, the graying of the clouds. Hope is a tri-branching goldenrod arcing over the purple asters, a bee nuzzling blossom to blossom. Hope is another and another, a butterfly almost black, red sumac close to the ground, soft pine needle branch jutting out near the bottom of the trunk. Hope is a slope, a swale, a swamp, a sibilant insect, a sweep of acorns on the path beneath the reach of the oak, on the path that angles toward the deep pine woods, what I think is a rabbit hole. Barb says, I sketched again at the top of the hill, and I'm sorry if you missed it. A crane, just as she names it. Again, the fricative dissonance, like a tractor grinding gears, deep belly breath, grating, scraping, scrapping, bellowing through long, narrow neck, unsong, unmusic, unmistakably crane. It did not sound another note. Still, it spelled hope. Housewarming prayer for my friend Andy Kumbo Floyd. Let there be cinnamon and nutmeg to grace the flavor of pumpkin soup and apple pie. In honor of Ruth, let there be fragrant spaghetti sauce. In memory of Georgina, let it begin with garlic and parsley. Let all the named and nameless women who ever cooked in this kitchen return with their blessings. Let all dear women who wanted to or who had to start over, start here with me. Let us continue in each other's names. Let there be clean water, clean dishes, clean floors, clean windows, clean air, and inviting mountains that extend and cradle your view. Let there be firm footing, an open door, and friends. In honor of those who have been bruised, let the words of the unheard be heard. Let there be plum trees. Let there be a porch swing and rocks at the side of the water where you can dangle your feet. Let there be goats to tend and the skill to tend them, a horse to groom and ride, a strong and gentle dog, and a hearth where she can nap. Let there be books to hide in and to rise from with renewed hope and courage. Let there be writing and writers here at work and here in spirit. Let there be James Baldwin, Lopez Lemong, Aggie, and Gruff. In memory of all who worked or who were denied the land and who imagined what it could be, let there be mercy. Let justice flow like water and integrity like an unfailing stream. Let there be prophets like Amos. Let there be justice, freedom, and herbs.
I'm Mario Willis. I'm currently Milwaukee's Poet Laureate. And since Peggy asked, I'll read a poem. It's called Fear God. Fear God, lest he might desert you on your hunt for a Savior, repent. Lest Christ climb down from the cross unwounded and the corpus be made useless. Far from the savannas of my ancestors, walking the tracks with the satanic conjurings of my own vanity, convinced the valley shadows look familiar. Death is eventual, but a righteous man would tear the tongue from his throat to keep from murdering the light in his brother left here in his care to resurrection. Pity the man without mercy. Karma's abacus makes an accounting, and the good die mostly over bullcrap, but the evil dies slowly more often and alone. Do not envy the hell they photograph. Even when it looks like vacation destination and deeds of sail to mountains, remember other men called them theirs. These lies are common among small mammals who hoard what they could never eat, like storehouses can keep away the darkness. You can't buy more time. Only stays are execution, but the judge who wrote the sky has no reprieve for you to appeal. There is no lower court or change of venue. Be careful in your wantings that they do not corrupt your mind. Drink more water and mind your effing business. Your sister's safety is your business. Keep her safe and feed your children love like breast milk, because long after the ducks have dried from drinking, your seeds will need love for growing strong in survival. Notice the sun who reigns in the sky. But commune with the moon, she is far closer and more likely to hear you. God is far closer than the moon or the sun, but we have lost the custom of speaking to the unseen. So scream toward the celestial bodies you can keep track of and fear God. Far more than police dogs and bureau agents, his jurisdiction is absolute, and though his mercy is endless, do not test the depths of the water, because in drowning, there is no escape. Fear God.
It's in here. You can see that we have a strong tradition of poets who have been fulfilling this laureate role. And we are about to add another. Thank you to all three of the finalists for the wonderful poetry you have brought us. And the new Milwaukee Youth Poet Laureate is Aleena. Oh, I didn't wait for the drum roll. Okay, so I rocked that. You want to do the drum roll again? The new Milwaukee Youth Poet Laureate is Aleena. Would you like to say a few words?
I'm at a loss for words. I'm just really grateful to have this opportunity to be able to service the community. As I said, I shared little pieces of my soul today, and that was very vulnerable. And I hope that I can encourage other people to also be vulnerable and embrace the power of language. So thank you.
Thank you all for being here. Congratulations to Aleena. Congratulations for all of you for sharing your work. It takes so much bravery, especially, I can't imagine the eternity you sat through just now. Thank you all for submitting your work. It's been really nice getting to talk to you briefly. And please stay involved. We want all three of you incorporated into Milwaukee's poetry community, like from now on, definitely. And thank you all again for being here. It means so much to all of us to see so much support, generational support for so many youth poets, and I can't wait to see what we all do, all 4 of us, for the next year. Thank you again all for being here.